She found him sprawled on blood-slicked concrete, 3 infant carriers clutched against his chest like body armor. He was dying under the harsh warehouse lights, and he was aiming a Beretta straight at her heart. The November rain had been punishing Brooklyn's Red Hook waterfront for 6 hours straight. The kind of coastal storm that turned loading docks into skating rinks and soaked straight through discount delivery hoodies. Naomi Carter watched her van's wipers lose their battle against the downpour, her breath fogging the cracked windshield. The dashboard clock glowed 11:47 p.m. She'd been grinding since her nursing shift ended at 7, clinical rotations until 6:30, then straight into the door drive hustle. She'd started pre-med 3 years back before money ran out and forced her into nursing assistant work. In the end, her mother's death made her drop out of everything. Her feet throbbed in her worn-out Nikes. Her stomach had been empty since the protein bar she'd rationed that morning, saving half for tomorrow's breakfast. The app pinged. You have arrived. Deliver to Warehouse 7, loading dock entrance. $28 tip. Naomi's chest tightened with something close to hope. That tip meant she could pay her phone bill and still eat tomorrow. Meant her student loan wouldn't default this month. She grabbed the thermal bag from the passenger seat. High-end Italian order, $300 feast from Lombardi's, the kind of midnight indulgence only money-to-burn types craved. The restaurant receipt showed delicate handwriting and a total that made her monthly rent look reasonable. Naomi killed the engine. The silence felt immediate and wrong. No hum of machinery, no security lights sweeping the dock, just rain hammering corrugated metal and the distant groan of container ships on the East River. She delivered to waterfront warehouses before. They always had cameras, guards, that industrial buzz of legitimate night operations. This one felt like a grave. Just drop it and leave, she thought. Clock out, drive home, collapse. But that $28 tip. Naomi pulled her hood up and stepped into the storm. It hit like glass shards, cold and vindictive. The loading dock loomed ahead, a concrete platform jutting from the building's side. The overhead sodium light was shattered. The security booth where a guard should be sitting stood empty, its window reflecting nothing but darkness. Her sneakers splashed through oily puddles as she approached. The thermal bag felt heavier with each step. Something in her gut twisted. Nursing school had taught her to trust that instinct. The same instinct that made her notice when a patient's breathing changed before the monitors alarmed, when someone's color went wrong in ways machines couldn't measure yet. She was 15 feet from the dock entrance when she heard it. Crying. Not just any crying, the desperate, hiccuping wails of infants. 3 voices, actually. 3 babies. Naomi froze, the thermal bag slipping from her numb fingers. It hit the wet pavement with a dull thud. Forgotten. Hello. Her voice came out smaller than she intended, swallowed by rain and the cavernous space. Is someone there? The crying intensified, terrified, abandoned, primal. Naomi's feet moved before her brain could stop them. She rounded the corner of the loading dock, her eyes struggling against the shadows. The security light from the main building barely reached here, casting everything in sickly orange and deep black. Then she saw them. 3 infant carriers sat on the rain-slicked concrete, partially sheltered by a fire escape overhead. The babies inside couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 months old. Their small faces were red and scrunched with distress, their cries ragged and desperate, the sound of children who'd been crying for far too long. But it was the man beside them that made Naomi's breath stop. He was slumped against the brick wall, one hand white-knuckled around the handle of the nearest carrier. Even in the dim light, she could see the dark stains spreading across his shoulder and torso, mixing with rain. Too thick to be water, too dark to be anything but blood. His suit was expensive, even ruined and blood-soaked. She could tell it cost more than her entire semester's tuition had. Dark hair slicked back with rain and sweat, and ink. Intricate tattoos creeping up his neck from beneath his collar, Roman numerals and geometric patterns, deliberate and beautiful. A black luxury SUV sat 30 feet away, its front end crumpled into a support pillar, one headlight still flickering weakly through the smoke rising from the hood. Oh my God! Naomi dropped to her knees beside him. The cold water soaked through her jeans instantly, but she barely registered it. Sir, can you hear me? His eyes fluttered open, dark brown, almost black in the shadows, filled with pain and something else that made her heart hammer against her ribs. Fear. Not for himself. For the crying babies beside him. Leave. His voice was barely a whisper, heavy with an Italian accent that turned the single word into music and gravel. His hand moved, slow and shaking, and Naomi's blood turned to ice. He was holding a gun. The barrel lifted, wavering, pointing directly at her chest. Leave, he rasped again, the effort making him wince. Or I put you down with the others. Naomi's hands were already pressing against his shoulder before her mind caught up with her body. Warm, wet, arterial blood. She'd seen enough in her clinical rotations to know this was bad. The wound was still bleeding, though not as heavily as it must have been initially, but his skin was cold. Too cold. His breathing shallow and ragged. You need a hospital. The words came out automatic, trained. I need to call 911. No. The gun steadied just slightly. His jaw clenched. No police. No hospital. They'll find my children. The babies were screaming now, a sound that tore at something primal in Naomi's chest. She looked at the loading dock doors behind him. They were locked from the outside, chains visible even in the poor light. He wasn't hiding here. He was trapped here. Her mind raced. 3 years of pre-med before she dropped out. Before her mother died in that sterile hospital bed, calling Naomi's name with her last breath, while Naomi stood there helpless, watching machines fail and doctors give up. Before she'd held her mother's hand and felt the exact moment life left, and known that if she'd just finished school, if she'd just learned more, if she'd just been better, faster, smarter, maybe. Please. The word left his lips like a prayer, like the last thing he'd ever say. The gun lowered, his strength failing. Please. Naomi looked at the babies, 3 tiny humans whose cries were weakening into exhausted whimpers. Looked at this man who was dying but still held on to them with everything he had left. Looked at the locked doors and the empty guard booth and the smoking vehicle and the pool of blood spreading beneath him. Every rational thought screamed at her to run, to call for help, to do the legal thing, the safe thing, the thing that wouldn't get her killed. But she thought of her mother's last words. Baby, don't let fear make you small. You're meant for bigger things than this. Okay. The word left her mouth before she could stop it. Okay, but we're moving now. Can you stand? He nodded. It was probably a lie. Naomi looked at the babies, their faces barely visible in the carriers. Are they yours? Something flickered in his eyes. Pride, even through the agony. My children, he said, his accent thick. Lucia. Marco. Nico. 3 names. 3 babies. 3 lives depending on what she did in the next 60 seconds. Then Lucia, Marco, and Nico are coming too. Naomi grabbed the first carrier, heavier than she expected, the baby inside still whimpering. She set it carefully where the rain couldn't reach, then grabbed the second. Her arms burned. She returned for the third, her muscles screaming in protest. Then she went back to the man, sliding her shoulder under his good arm. "On 3, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "My van is 60 feet away. You're going to make it. Understand?" He nodded again, and this time she saw something else in those dark eyes. Not just pain or fear, but recognition. Like he saw something in her that even she didn't see yet. 1, 2, 3. They rose together, his weight nearly buckling her knees. He was tall, easily 6'2", solid muscle beneath the ruined designer suit. He bit back a sound of agony, and Naomi felt him trembling. Step by agonizing step, they made their way toward her van. Naomi's lungs burned. Her legs shook. She kept talking, partly to keep him conscious, partly to keep herself from screaming. "I'm Naomi, by the way. Naomi Carter. I'm a nursing assistant. Well, I was pre-med. I dropped out, but I remember enough. God, I hope I remember enough." They reached the van. She propped him against the side and ran back for the babies, grabbing 2 carriers at once, her arms screaming in protest. She secured them in the back seat, her fingers fumbling with the belts. The babies had quieted to exhausted whimpers, their wide eyes watching her with that unnerving awareness infants sometimes have. "It's okay," Naomi whispered, though she had no idea if that was true. "I've got you." The man had slid down the side of the van by the time she returned. Naomi hauled him into the passenger seat, dead weight now, barely conscious. His head fell back against the headrest. She slammed the door and raced to the driver's side. The engine coughed twice before turning over. Naomi's hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the wheel. She pulled away from the warehouse, her eyes darting between the road and the man beside her. In the glow of the dashboard, she could see his face clearly now. Sharp features, the intricate ink crawling up his neck and disappearing into his hairline, the designer suit worth 6 months of her rent, the watch on his wrist worth enough to pay off her student loans twice over. What have I done? The drive to her studio apartment in Bed-Stuy usually took 40 minutes. Naomi made it in 23, running 3 red lights, pushing her van until the frame rattled. She kept talking the whole way, rambling, desperate. "My place is tiny, really tiny, but it's clean. I have medical supplies, bandages and stuff. I can do this. I can. Grazie." His voice cut through her panic, quiet but steady. Naomi's hands tightened on the wheel. In the back seat, one of the triplets started crying again, a sound that reached into her chest and squeezed. "Almost there," she promised them all, her voice breaking. "Almost there." She pulled up to her building, a walk up in Bed-Stuy that had seen better decades, killed the engine, and sat for one long moment in the silence. She'd just brought a wounded stranger and 3 babies to her home. She hadn't called the police. She had no idea what had happened to him, who he was running from, or why he was so desperate to avoid hospitals. His hand touched her arm. Naomi jumped. His eyes were open, clearer now despite the pain etched into every line of his face. "Grazie," he said again, and the weight of that single word settled over her like a crown she never asked to wear. Naomi nodded and stepped out into the rain. And so it began. If you are still listening and feel this story touching something inside you, take a moment to subscribe to our channel, to like and share this video so we can continue bringing heartfelt stories every day. And if it isn't too much to ask, would you tell me where you're watching from? Leave a comment below and let us know which corner of the world this story has reached. We treasure every word you share with us. Getting him up 4 flights of stairs with 3 car seats nearly killed them both. Naomi half-carried, half-dragged Dario while balancing a carrier in her free hand, pausing every few steps when his weight threatened to drag them both down. Blood soaked through her hoodie where his body pressed against hers. On the second-floor landing, Ms. Johnson's door cracked open. The older woman's eyes took in the blood, the baby's, Naomi's desperate face. Then the door closed again without a word. Brooklyn Code. See nothing, say nothing. By the time they reached her studio, Naomi's muscles were screaming. She kicked the door shut and let Dario collapse against the nearest wall, leaving a dark smear on the faded paint. The triplets' cries filled the cramped space, relentless, heartbreaking. Naomi spread her only clean sheet on the floor and grabbed her medical kit from under the futon. Stolen supplies from the hospital, a bottle of vodka, her cracked phone propped against a stack of textbooks playing a YouTube tutorial. Emergency bullet removal, field medicine. This is going to hurt, she warned, kneeling beside him. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength. My name, he rasped, is Dario Marchetti. And you just signed your death warrant. Naomi poured vodka over the wound. He hissed through his teeth but didn't scream. Then we'll die together. Now hold still. She pushed the forceps into his shoulder, feeling for the bullet. His fingers tightened on her wrist, bruising, desperate, but steady. The first bullet came free with a wet sound. Then the second from his side. 15 stitches later, her hands were covered in his blood. The babies, Naomi said, exhausted. Their mother. Dead. His voice broke. 4 months ago. My family is compromised. They want me dead. Want my children. He couldn't finish. Naomi checked the car seats, finding emergency supplies hidden in compartments beneath. Formula, diapers, cash. She lifted Lucia, the smallest, and the babies crying quieted. Those tiny fingers wrapped around Naomi's thumb, trusting, helpless. Then I guess we're all each other has now, Naomi whispered. 4 days passed in suspended reality. Naomi called in sick to both jobs, watched her bank account hit zero, and learned the chaotic rhythm of 3 babies on different sleep schedules. Her studio apartment became a fortress of diapers, formula bottles, and bloodied bandages. On the 3rd night, while changing Dario's dressings, she traced the Roman numerals covering his torso. These aren't just tattoos. No. His voice was stronger now, healing. They're a map. Swiss bank routing numbers, offshore property deeds, blackmail on judges and senators. My consigliere, Salvatore Costa, he murdered my wife during childbirth. Staged it as complications. His jaw clenched. He's been taking over the family ever since. The warehouse was supposed to finish it. Why not just kill you? Because dead, the cipher dies with me. Dario's eyes met hers. They need me alive to extract everything. Or they need my skin. Naomi's stomach turned. She thought of the bodies in the warehouse shadows, the locked doors. My delivery order was fake. He pulled out his phone, cracked but functional, showing her app's back-end data. They hacked it. Created a ghost order to lure a driver to that exact location, exact time. You weren't random, Naomi. You were the key to unlock those doors from outside. And when they killed me, you'd be the witness who got blamed. The horror of it crashed over her. She'd been a pawn, a scapegoat, disposable. I couldn't save my mother, Naomi whispered. Watched her die in a hospital bed, calling my name. I stood there useless while her voice broke. Dario's hand covered hers. My wife died calling for me. I was 3 floors down in a meeting. By the time I reached her. He closed his eyes. Salvatore held my sons and told me she'd asked for me at the end. Lies. All lies. They sat in shared grief, Two people bound by loss and blood. Later, Naomi found Dario at her window, tools in hand. "What are you doing?" "Your latch was broken." He tested it. "Now secure." "You saved my life." "It's the least I can do." Something shifted between them then. Something dangerous and inevitable. They ran out of formula on the fifth morning. Naomi had no choice but to risk the bodega 6 blocks down. She grabbed her hood, checked the street twice, and walked fast. At the counter, an elderly Italian woman appeared beside her. "Let me," she said, sliding crisp bills across to the cashier. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "For the babies." Naomi's blood went cold. "I don't need." "Take it." The woman's voice dropped. "They're watching." Naomi grabbed the supplies and ran. A man in a dark coat peeled off from a doorway, maintaining steady distance for 6 blocks. By the time she burst into her apartment, her hands were shaking. "We're compromised," she gasped. 3 hours later, Marco's body went rigid in her arms. White foam bubbled from his tiny mouth. Then Lucia seized. Then Nico. "The formula," Naomi choked out. "They poisoned it." No time for panic. No time for hospitals. Salvatore's men would be watching every ER. Naomi's training took over. She grabbed tubing, saline, a turkey baster from her kitchen drawer. "Hold them," she commanded Dario. "Keep them on their sides." Naomi worked on Marco first, measuring tubing, inserting it down his tiny throat while he gagged and fought. She pumped saline in, suctioned the contents back. Vomit and milk and something chemical. Again. Again. Until the fluid came back clear. Marco's seizures slowed. Stopped. His breathing evened. "Next one," she barked. "Lucia." Then Nico. Her hands steady despite her screaming mind. Dario held each baby with shaking arms, whispering prayers in Italian she didn't understand. When the last baby stabilized, Naomi collapsed against the wall. Tears streamed down her face, silent, hot, unstoppable. Dario crossed to her and pulled her against his chest with crushing force. He was shaking. No, crying. This dangerous man crying into her hair. "You saved them," his voice broke. "You saved my children." "We have to run," Naomi whispered into his shirt. "They know where we are. I owe you more than my life." Dario cupped her face, his thumbs wiping her tears. "I owe you my legacy. My blood. Everything." It wasn't gratitude. It was a vow. They fled at midnight, Naomi behind the wheel while Dario secured the triplets. 3 sets of headlights appeared in her rear view within minutes. "Drive." Dario twisted in his seat, weapon drawn. Naomi floored it, her van screaming through Red Hook's industrial maze. Bullets shattered the rear window. The baby's screams filled the vehicle. Primal, terrified. She took a hard right, tires shrieking, and crashed through a chain-link fence into the shipping container yards. Metal walls rose around them like a labyrinth. Naomi killed the lights and drove by instinct alone, weaving between containers until the pursuit fell back. She parked in a narrow gap, engine ticking in the sudden silence. "Stay here." Dario stepped out, gun raised. Naomi grabbed the triplets, her heart hammering. Then she heard it, a single set of footsteps approaching. A figure emerged from the shadows, masked, armed. But he froze when Naomi gasped. Slowly, he pulled off the mask. Terence's face stared back, 3 years older, hollow-eyed, destroyed. "Know me." His voice cracked. "Terence." She couldn't breathe. You were supposed to be in rehab. They have Kayla. His gun shook in his hands. Salvatore's men took my daughter. Said they'd kill her if I don't bring him in. He gestured at Dario. I'm sorry. I don't have a choice. Dario raised his weapon. Naomi threw herself between them. Don't. She looked at Terence, the cousin who'd taught her to ride a bike, who'd held her at her mother's funeral. Please. There has to be another way. There isn't. Shouts erupted. More hunters converging on their position. Terence's face changed. Something settled behind his eyes. Resolution, maybe peace. He turned away from them and opened fire on his own team. Run! He screamed. Naomi, run! Naomi didn't move. Couldn't. Dario grabbed her arm, pulling her back toward the van. Terence went down hard, bullets tearing through him. Naomi broke free and dropped beside him, her hands pressing uselessly against the wounds. Get her back for me, he whispered, blood on his lips. Promise. I promise, Naomi sobbed. Then he was gone. The safe house was a studio above a Cantonese restaurant in Sunset Park. The smell of ginger and garlic drifted up through the floorboards. Naomi laid the sleeping triplets in their carriers while Dario collapsed onto the single futon, his shoulder bleeding again through the bandages. Hold still. Naomi knelt beside him, peeling away the soaked gauze. Her fingers brushed his skin. Too warm, feverish. You tore the stitches. I've had worse. But his jaw clenched as she cleaned the wound. The space between them had been building for days. Every touch while changing bandages. Every shared glance over the babies' heads. Every moment of survival binding them closer. Why did you trust me? Naomi's voice was barely a whisper. I'm nobody. Dario's hand caught her wrist. You're the only person in 5 years who chose me over safety. That makes you the most dangerous woman I've ever met. His eyes dropped to her mouth. Naomi leaned in, and when their lips met, it was like drowning people surfacing for air. Desperate. Hungry. His hand slid into her hair, pulling her closer. She tasted blood and need and something that felt terrifyingly like hope. Naomi climbed onto his lap, careful of his wounds. His hands gripped her hips. She was ready to fall, ready to let this dangerous man ruin her completely. Then 3 deliberate knocks echoed through the door. They froze. A woman's voice, sharp and amused. Open up, Dario. I know you're in there. We need to discuss your children. The color drained from Dario's face. That's impossible. His voice was hollow. She's dead. Who? Naomi scrambled off him. My wife. Dario moved to the door like a man walking to his execution. When he opened it, a woman stood in the hallway, stunning in a white Valentino dress, flanked by 2 armed men. Isabella Marchetti smiled. Hello, darling. Miss me? Naomi's world tilted sideways. The dead wife. Very much alive. Surprise, Isabella purred, stepping inside. We have so much to discuss. If you are still listening and feel this story touching something inside you, take a moment to subscribe to our channel, to like and share this video so we can continue bringing heartfelt stories every day. And if it isn't too much to ask, would you tell me where you're watching from? Leave a comment below and let us know which corner of the world this story has reached. We treasure every word you share with us. Isabella Marchetti moved into the apartment like she owned it, her white Valentino dress pristine against the dingy walls. The 2 armed men behind her fanned out, weapons ready. How? Dario's voice was raw. I didn't die, darling. I evolved. Isabetta's smile was ice. Bribed the doctor, staged the body. I was tired of playing dutiful mob wife while you clung to your precious honor. The triplets aren't mine. Not really. She glanced at the sleeping babies with cold appraisal. Surrogates. Expensive investments after that assassination attempt ruined my body. I never wanted them, Dario. I wanted power. Naomi's blood turned to ice. She moved closer to the carriers. Salvatore and I have been modernizing the family, Isabetta continued. But we need the cipher codes. Give them to me, or I start with the smallest one first. One of the guards raised his weapon toward Lucia's carrier. Naomi didn't think. She grabbed the crowbar leaning against the wall, left by some previous tenant, and swung with everything she had. The metal connected with the first guard's skull. He dropped. The second guard spun toward her. Naomi swung again, catching him across the temple. He crumpled. Isabetta reached for her own weapon. Dario was faster, twisting it from her grip and forcing her to her knees. You made a mistake coming here, he said coldly. Did I? Isabetta laughed. You think this ends with me? A gunshot cracked through the air. Marco's carrier rocked. The baby's scream pierced the room. High, terrified, wrong. No. Naomi lunged for him, her hands finding blood on his tiny arm. The bullet had grazed him. Not deep, but bleeding. We're leaving. Dario zip-tied Isabetta's wrists with brutal efficiency. Now. Naomi grabbed Marco's carrier, pressing gauze against his wound with shaking hands. Lucia and Nico were screaming now too, startled awake by the chaos. They fled into the night, Isabetta stumbling between them, Marco bleeding, and somewhere in the darkness, more hunters closing in. The war had just begun. They found shelter in an abandoned subway station beneath Red Hook. Graffitied walls, the smell of rust and decay. Marco's whimpers were weakening. His skin had gone gray. He's going into shock, Naomi's voice cracked. I don't have enough supplies. I can't. Use mine. Isabetta's voice cut through the darkness. Still zip-tied, she held out her bound wrists. I'm O-negative. Universal donor. You just tried to kill him. And now I'm trying to save him. Isabetta's eyes were unreadable. Take my blood or watch him die. Your choice. Naomi's hands shook as she pulled out her 4 kit. She sterilized a pocket knife with her lighter, found Isabetta's vein, inserted the needle. Blood flowed dark and steady through the tubing into Marco's tiny arm. The baby's color slowly improved. His breathing evened. While the transfusion ran, Isabetta talked. You think you're different from me. That you won't lose yourself in this world. She laughed bitterly. I was like you once. Idealistic. Thought love would be enough. But being Dario's wife meant becoming invisible. His shadow. His accessory. So you faked your death and tried to kill him? I tried to take what should have been mine from the beginning. Power. Recognition. A legacy that wasn't just reflected glory. Isabetta's gaze locked onto Naomi's. This world will hollow you out too. Unless you take it over completely. The transfusion finished. Naomi disconnected the line, bandaged Marco's arm. He was breathing steadily now, color returning to his cheeks. Dario's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, his face darkening. When? He hung up. The Marchetti Council meets tomorrow night. If I don't show, they declare me dead and carve up my territory. There's more, Naomi said, reading his expression. $5 million bounty. Every hunter in 3 states is converging on New York. He looked at the triplets, then at Naomi. We run tonight. Disappear. It's the only way. No. Naomi's voice was steel. We fight. We leave tonight, Dario said, pacing the abandoned station. New identities. Montana. Sicily. Somewhere they'll never find us. No. Naomi's voice cut through the darkness. Naomi, be reasonable. I've been running my whole life. She stood, facing him. From my family after Mom died. From pre-med when it got hard. From every difficult thing I've ever faced. I'm done being small. I'm done disappearing. They'll kill you. Then we die fighting. Her eyes blazed. We face them together, or we die together. Those are the only options. Dario stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Then slowly, he nodded. Together. They left the triplets with Ms. Johnson, who took one look at the babies and pulled out a shotgun from behind her door. Anyone comes knocking, they ain't leaving, she said simply. Brooklyn Code. While Dario drove, Naomi hacked Isabetta's phone, bypassing security, downloading files. Bank records. Communications. Evidence of Salvatore's embezzlement, his side deals with rival families, his plans to sell the Marchetti political connections piecemeal. Got it, she breathed. Everything we need. The Port Authority warehouse loomed ahead. Massive, industrial, lit by harsh fluorescents. 15 men in expensive suits sat around a conference table. Old world power. Decades of bloodline and tradition. Naomi felt the weight of every time she'd made herself small. Every time she'd code-switched to survive predominantly white spaces. Every time she'd apologized for taking up room she'd earned. Every time she'd let someone else's comfort matter more than her own worth. Not anymore. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin. She was walking into that room as Naomi Carter, pre-med dropout, nursing assistant, delivery driver, the woman who'd saved 3 babies and a mob boss with nothing but stolen supplies and sheer will. She was walking in as an equal. And she'd leave as a queen or not at all. Ready? Dario asked. Naomi took his hand. Let's burn it down. They walked through the warehouse doors together. 15 men turned as they entered, old world power in tailored suits, decades of bloodline and tradition. Salvatore Costa sat at the head of the table, smiling. Dario. What a pleasant surprise. Is it? Dario threw Isabetta's phone onto the table. Because I have embezzlement records, communications with the Rossetti family, and proof you murdered my wife's doctor to cover her faked death. Salvatore's smile faltered. The council erupted, voices overlapping, demands for explanation. Don Giuliano, the elderly council head, raised one hand. Silence fell. Is this true? Salvatore reached for his weapon. Dario was faster. One shot. Salvatore crumpled, blood spreading across expensive marble. The betrayer is dead, Don Giuliano said calmly. Now we address the other problem. His gaze shifted to Naomi. You're a loose end, Ms. Carter. You've seen too much. Witnesses don't survive our world. 3 council members reached for weapons. Dario shot 2 before they cleared leather. The third froze. New rule, Dario said into the shocked silence. His gun swept the room. Naomi Carter sits at this table as my equal partner, or I transfer every asset to offshore accounts you'll never access and disappear. Your choice, evolve or become extinct. Naomi stepped forward. Didn't ask permission. She pulled out Isabetta's phone and connected it to the projector. Financial records flooded the wall, the council's own vulnerabilities, exposed laundering operations, every weakness documented. "I can make you legitimate," she said, her voice steady. "Transition your operations into legal enterprises. Or I can make you the FBI's Christmas gift. Your choice." The silence was absolute. Don Giuliano stared at her. Then he laughed. Rough, genuine. "My daughter had your fire. She died because this world wouldn't bend for her." He stood slowly, extending his weathered hand. "Welcome to the family, Ms. Carter. Try not to burn it down in your first year." Naomi took his hand. Her grip was firm. "No promises, Don Giuliano." The old man's smile widened. "Good." 6 months later, Naomi stood in a Tribeca penthouse overlooking the Hudson, sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Her reflection in the glass showed someone she barely recognized. Tailored blazer, natural hair styled in elegant twists, confidence radiating from every gesture. "Gentlemen, the Brooklyn rezoning project clears in 3 weeks, she said into the conference call, her voice commanding. "Our construction subsidiary is positioned to break ground immediately. Any questions?" Silence. Respect. She ended the call and turned. The triplets played on a custom foam mat under watchful security, fortress-level protection disguised as casual presence. Lucia pulled herself up on the coffee table, wobbling. Marco stacked blocks with intense concentration. Nico crawled toward her, squealing. "Mama, know me." Lucia called, arms outstretched. Naomi scooped her up, pressing a kiss to dark curls. These babies who'd been screaming in a blood-soaked warehouse now thrived, healthy, happy, loved. Dario entered from the bedroom, still buttoning his shirt. He stopped, watching her with an expression that made her breath catch. Pride. Desire. Or what? She asked. "You command that boardroom the same way you used to juggle delivery orders." He crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Except now you own the room instead of surviving it." Regrets. The question was playful now, no longer weighted with fear. "Not one." Dario's lips found her neck. "You." Naomi looked around the penthouse, the life they'd built from blood and bullets and impossible choices. She wasn't the invisible delivery driver drowning in debt anymore. Wasn't the pre-med dropout who'd watched her mother die feeling helpless. She was Naomi Carter Marchetti, first black woman to co-lead a major Italian crime family. The queen who'd refused to ask permission. The old world hadn't wanted to bend for her. So she'd broken it. Rebuilt it better. Stronger. Hers. "Not one," she whispered back. Because one fake delivery order had changed everything. And she'd turned a death trap into a throne. She wore that crown like she was born to it. But after everything you've witnessed in this video, there's a bigger question that lingers. One we can't escape no matter how hard we try. When the world finally demands that we choose who we are, do we rise? Or do we run? Naomi stood there beside the very men who wanted her erased. And still she didn't shrink. Dario faced the council ready to lose everything, even his own blood, rather than betray the woman who saved him. And you, if you were the one standing at that table, with fear clawing at your ribs and danger breathing down your neck, what would you have done? Would you have fought for a truth that could cost you your life? Or stayed silent to save yourself? We tell ourselves we'll be brave when the moment comes, but would we really? Think about the last time you had to defend something you believed in. Did you stand firm, or did you walk away? Naomi didn't walk. Dario didn't bow. And maybe that's why their story hit you somewhere deeper than you expected. If this video stirred something inside you, If it made you question who you become when everything is on the line, let us know in the comments. Speak from that quiet place inside you that rarely gets heard. And if this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength, and subscribe so you don't miss the videos still to come. Thank you for staying to the very end of this video. May your days be gentle, your nights peaceful, and your choices guided by courage. Goodbye, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.